At a midnight party, a powerful man clears the room when he sees his quiet maid tug her collar. Hiding burned skin, she refuses to explain. She moves like someone who's lived in danger, counting exits, flinching at fire, while threats arrive at his door. Return what you stole. He locks down his penthouse and keeps her close, telling himself it's just protection, until a generator test kills the lights and she freezes, and he recognizes the pattern of those scars. The marks aren't random, they hide a brand, a past with a brutal enemy, and a secret that ties her to a night he's spent years trying to forget. She didn't just survive the fire, she saved someone he loves. Now his enemies want her back, and his conscience wants the truth. When the truth finally burns through, will he protect her or confess what he did? And when she learns it, will she run or make him pay to love her? The crystal glasses clinked as New York's elite mingled in Ronan Vale's penthouse, their laughter echoing off marble floors. Through the crowd, his eyes caught on Elodie Hart. His new maid moved like a shadow between guests, collecting empty champagne flutes with careful precision. But it was the slight adjustment of her collar that drew his attention, a reflexive gesture hiding something beneath the starched uniform. A flash of mottled skin, a burn scar. Ronan's jaw tightened as he tracked her movements. She navigated the room with practiced awareness, always maintaining clear paths to the exits. Not the behavior of a typical domestic worker. "Hey, sweetheart, how about a private tour?" A drunk businessman cornered Elodie against the bar, his meaty hand reaching for her waist. Before she could react, Ronan's voice cut through the party chatter. "Out!" One word, delivered with quiet authority. "Everyone out. Now!" The room cleared within minutes, leaving only Elodie standing rigid by the bar, her gloved hands clasped tightly together. Ronan gestured for her to follow him to the private kitchen. Under the softer lighting, he could better study her face, young but with old eyes, watching him with carefully controlled wariness. "House rules, Miss Hart." He leaned against the counter. "Curfew is midnight. The security floors are off limits without explicit clearance. You report directly to me, no one else." She nodded, but her attention darted between him and the 3 possible exits: the main door, service entrance, and window. Those white gloves never left her hands, even as she adjusted her serving tray. "Yes, Mr. Vale," she said softly, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't quite place. Later, in the surveillance room, Ronan reviewed her file on the monitors. His analyst had flagged inconsistencies, work history too neat, references that checked out too perfectly. Someone had scrubbed her background clean. "Pull everything we have on her," he ordered. "Birth records, school transcripts, previous employers. Something's not adding up." The analyst nodded, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Sir, her papers! They're good forgeries! Professional work!" Ronan's interest deepened. A maid with forged papers and burn scars, who moved like someone used to watching her back. The mystery of her pulled at him, even as his instincts warned of potential complications. He found her waiting at the staff elevator, still perfectly composed despite the late hour. "Miss Hart." His voice made her turn, those guarded eyes meeting his. "If anyone makes you uncomfortable again, you come to me directly." The threat in his words was clear to anyone listening, a warning to his staff that she was under his protection. But there was something else too, a curiosity he couldn't dismiss. "Thank you, Mr. Vale," she replied, stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, Elodie let out a shaky breath. "Stay invisible," she reminded herself. "Don't draw attention, don't let anyone look too closely." But Ronan Vale was already reaching for his phone, punching in a familiar number. "Jax," he said when his security chief answered. "Double the patrols on the residential floors, focus on the staff wing." He paused, watching the elevator's descent on the security feed. "And I want eyes on the new maid, 24/7. "Something wrong with her background check?" Jax asked, already alert. "Everything's wrong with it," Ronan replied. "It's too clean. Find out what she's hiding." In her small room in the staff quarters, Elodie carefully hung up her uniform. Her fingers traced the burn scar extending from her shoulder down her back, a permanent reminder of that night at South Dock. The screams, the heat, the collapsing beams. She'd survived, but the price was a life spent looking over her shoulder. Now she was living in the home of one of New York's most dangerous men, walking a razor's edge between safety and exposure. The irony wasn't lost on her, but the Vale household offered protection of its own kind. No one would look for her here, in the literal lion's den. Ronan stood in his office, staring out at the glittering cityscape. The woman was a puzzle, and he'd always excelled at solving those. Her presence stirred something in him. Protective instincts, yes, but also an inexplicable need to unravel her secrets. He pulled up the security footage from earlier, studying her movements, the way she anticipated the drunk guest's advance before it happened, how she positioned herself to maintain sightlines, the careful distance she kept from everyone, even while serving them. "Sir?" His analyst appeared in the doorway. "I've started the deep background check on Hart. Do you want me to prioritize anything specific?" Ronan considered the question. Focus on any incidents involving fire in her history, and check missing persons cases from the last 5 years. Women matching her description. "You think she's running from something?" "Everyone in this life is running from something," Ronan replied, his eyes still on the footage. "The question is what's chasing her?" The night settled over the Vale Tower, but sleep eluded both Ronan and Elodie. She lay in her bed, wondering if she'd made a mistake coming here. While 30 floors above, he paced his office, unable to shake the feeling that her arrival would change everything. In the security office, Jax Moreno adjusted the patrol schedules, adding extra coverage to the staff wing. He'd learned to trust Ronan's instincts over the years. If the boss wanted the new maid watched, there was a reason. But as he reviewed her file photo, he couldn't help wondering if Ronan's interest was purely professional. The city hummed beyond the windows, oblivious to the currents shifting within the Vale Tower. A dangerous man's curiosity had been piqued. A woman's carefully constructed facade was under scrutiny, and the first threads of an inevitable collision were being drawn tight. At 5:45 a.m., the Vale penthouse kitchen hummed with quiet precision. Elodie moved between gleaming counters, her steps soundless against marble floors. Steam rose from the coffee maker as she prepared Ronan's usual breakfast. Poached eggs on sourdough, garnished with fresh herbs from the rooftop garden. The knife moved with practiced efficiency through chives, her cuts precise and measured. She didn't hear Ronan enter, but she felt his presence. A shift in the air, the weight of observation. "Your knife work is interesting," he said, making her pause mid-slice. "Who trained you?" Elodie kept cutting, each movement deliberate. "Life," she answered simply, not looking up. Ronan leaned against the counter, close enough to notice how she angled herself, always maintaining clear sight of both exits. His own training recognized the habits of someone who'd learned survival the hard way. "Life must have been quite the teacher," he commented, watching her plate the eggs with professional precision. She flinched slightly when steam touched her hand, a reaction too quick to mask. The morning light caught the edge of her scar before she adjusted her collar. Ronan tracked her movements as she worked, the way she checked window reflections, how she never fully turned her back to any entrance. Each tell added another piece to the puzzle she presented. The intercom crackled. "Attention all floors, routine generator test scheduled for noon today. Expect brief power fluctuations." Elodie's knife stilled for a fraction of a second. Most wouldn't have noticed, but Ronan caught the tiny hesitation, the slight tightening of her fingers around the handle. In the security office, Jax Moreno received a plain manila envelope from the morning courier. Inside was a single photograph. Elodie entering the Vale building, time-stamped from her first day. Below it, typed in bold letters, "Return what you stole." Jax immediately pulled up the building's surveillance, reviewing every angle of the courier's delivery. The man's face was obscured by a cap, his movements practiced enough to avoid direct camera views. "Sir," Jax called Ronan's private line, "we have a situation." Ronan found his security chief 15 minutes later, examining the photograph under bright lights. "She's being watched," Jax said without preamble. "We need to move her." Agreed. Ronan's response was immediate. "Have the secure suite on my floor prepared. Full security protocols." "You're keeping her close," Jax observed, careful to keep his tone neutral. "I protect what's mine." Ronan's voice carried the edge of authority that had built his empire. "And someone just threatened my employee." The day passed in careful orchestration. Security teams swept the secure suite while Ronan had Elodie's belongings transferred from the staff quarters. She took the news of her relocation with that same quiet composure that marked everything she did, though Ronan noticed her eyes mapping escape routes even as he explained the situation. The secure suite occupied the southeast corner of his private floor, a space usually reserved for high-value guests requiring protection. Its windows were bulletproof, its walls reinforced with dedicated security feeds monitored around the clock. Evening found them standing at the suite's entrance, Ronan programming a custom access code into the keypad. "Your code only," he explained, demonstrating the sequence. "Not even I can override it." He watched her test the code, noting how her fingers moved with the same precise economy as her knife work that morning. 2 guards took position outside her door, experienced men who knew better than to ask questions. Jax will arrange rotating escorts for when you're working, Ronan continued. They'll maintain distance, but they'll be there. Elodie nodded, her face carefully neutral. Thank you, Mr. Vale. The formality amused him. Here she was, moved to his private floor, under his direct protection, and still maintaining professional distance. But he'd seen beneath that calm exterior, seen the warrior's instincts in her knife work, the survivor's awareness in her constant vigilance. The generator test, he said suddenly, making her pause in the doorway. Fire makes you nervous. It wasn't a question. Her slight tension confirmed his observation. Many things make me nervous, Mr. Vale, she replied softly. It's how I stay alive. The admission hung between them, heavy with unspoken history. Ronan studied her face, searching for any crack in her careful composure. But Elodie had perfected her mask long ago, and even his scrutiny couldn't penetrate it. Get some rest, he said finally. Jax will meet you at 6 tomorrow to establish security protocols. She nodded and stepped into the suite. The door closed with a soft click, multiple locks engaging automatically. Ronan stood there a moment longer, considering the layers of mystery surrounding his new maid. In the security office, Jax reviewed dossiers of potential escorts, selecting only those with extensive protection experience. The photograph lay on his desk, a warning and a puzzle. Whoever was watching Elodie had resources, patience, and professional skills. The Vale Tower settled into its nighttime rhythm, but new currents ran beneath its surface. In her secure suite, Elodie stood at the windows, looking out at the city lights. 30 stories below, a dark sedan idled at the curb before pulling away, its driver speaking into a phone. 2 floors up, Ronan reviewed security footage from every angle of Elodie's arrival at the building, searching for what he might have missed. The threat against her had changed the game, bringing her closer into his orbit. Whether that would prove dangerous for her or her pursuers remained to be seen. The night deepened, and New York's lights glittered like scattered diamonds. In the Vale Tower, new protective measures clicked into place around a woman whose secrets were drawing dangerous attention. Whatever she had stolen, whoever was hunting her, they would have to go through Ronan Vale to reach her now. The generator test began precisely at noon. A low hum vibrated through the building's bones as backup systems engaged. In the kitchen, fluorescent lights stuttered, casting strange shadows across stainless steel surfaces. The HVAC system groaned overhead, a mechanical beast awakening. Elodie stood at the stove, spatula frozen mid-flip over a pan of eggs. Her shoulders went rigid as the pilot flames jumped and danced, their blue tongues stretching higher with the power fluctuation. Her breath caught, then shortened into quick, shallow gasps. Ronan noticed immediately. He crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, positioning himself between her and the flame. Look at me, he commanded, voice dropping to a steady murmur. Count with me. 1, 2. Her eyes, wide and unfocused, found his face. Her free hand gripped the counter's edge until her knuckles went white. 3, 4, he continued, deliberately slow. Match my breathing. The spatula clattered to the floor as Elodie's fingers lost their grip. She swayed slightly, and Ronan's hand came up to steady her elbow. The movement caused her collar to shift, exposing more of her shoulder than she typically allowed. That's when he saw it. The burn pattern was distinctive, a diagonal slash of puckered skin that branched like lightning across her shoulder. Ronan's breath caught. He'd seen that pattern before, in photographs he'd reviewed countless times. The South Dock warehouse fire, a calculated move to eliminate a rival's operation that had gone catastrophically wrong. His own operation, his order. Sit, he said, guiding her to a kitchen stool while keeping himself between her and the stove. Her breathing was evening out, but tremors still ran through her arms. He pulled out his phone, typing quickly, cancel all scheduled generator tests, immediately. Seconds later, the backup systems powered down. The kitchen lights stabilized, and the HVAC settled into its normal rhythm. The pilot flames returned to their steady blue dots. Elodie's color slowly returned. I'm sorry, she whispered, straightening her collar with shaking hands. I don't usually... It caught me off guard. No apologies needed. Ronan's voice remained calm while his mind raced, cataloging details. The way she avoided the stove's heat, her constant awareness of exits, the gloves she never removed, pieces of a puzzle he should have recognized sooner. He sent another message to Jax. Adjust fire suppression settings on level 30, maximum sensitivity. priority one. Elodie stood carefully, smoothing her uniform with practiced composure. The eggs are ruined, she observed, her professional mask slipping back into place. Leave them. Ronan's tone brooked no argument. Take an hour. Rest. She nodded and left the kitchen, her steps measured and controlled despite her lingering pallor. Ronan watched her go, then headed straight to his private office. The South Dock files were buried deep in his secure servers. He pulled them up, scanning quickly through photographs taken in the fire's aftermath. The forensics team had documented burn patterns on structural supports, mapping how the fire had spread through the warehouse. And there, in a supplemental report he'd initially dismissed, detailed descriptions of burn patterns found on survivors. He compared them to his mental image of Elodie's scars. The branching pattern, the depth of tissue damage, the distinctive angle of spread, it matched. Hour after hour, he dug deeper, survivor statements, hospital records, witness accounts that had been buried to protect his interests. Names had been changed or redacted, but the evidence was there. A group of women had been trapped in the warehouse that night. Not rival operators, but victims of human trafficking who'd been held there temporarily. The knowledge sat like acid in his stomach. He'd ordered that fire to eliminate competition, never questioning his intelligence team's assessment of the building's occupants. The death toll had been higher than expected, but he'd written it off as necessary collateral damage. Now, years later, one of those survivors worked in his kitchen, cooked his meals, jumped at flames and hid her scars and watched every exit. The clock crept past midnight, then 1, then 2. Ronan's jaw ached from clenching as he absorbed detail after damning detail. Finally, he closed the files and picked up his phone one last time. Implement no flame policy in all kitchens on my level, he messaged Jax. Electric appliances only. Immediate effect. He set the phone down and stared at the city lights beyond his window. Elodie had survived his order that night, escaped a blazing warehouse he'd condemned. Now she worked under his roof, either unaware of his role or playing a very long game. The burn patterns didn't lie. The evidence was clear, but confronting her now would be premature. He needed to understand her purpose here, whether she knew who had given the order that scarred her, whether she was a threat or simply another ghost from his bloody past, seeking shelter in an ironic twist of fate. Until he knew for certain, he would watch, protect, and try to atone in small ways, like eliminating open flames from her workspace. It was the least he could do for a survivor of his own ruthless ambition. The city glittered below, unaware of the weight of revelation pressing down on one of its most powerful men. In her secure suite, several floors below, Elodie would be sleeping, her scars hidden, her secrets still her own. For now. His office was silent except for the soft hum of computers and the distant sound of late-night traffic. The files were closed, but their contents had permanently altered how he saw his quiet, competent maid. The woman who survived his fire only to end up in his employ, carrying scars that testified to his past sins. Dawn crept through the penthouse windows as Elodie prepared breakfast, her movements precise despite her exhaustion. She'd barely slept, the generator incident having stirred memories she preferred keeping buried. Ronan entered silently, his presence filling the kitchen before he spoke. Is anyone looking for you, Elodie? She stilled, hands steady on the coffee carafe. People like me keep our heads down. Her voice was soft but firm, a practiced neutrality that revealed nothing. That's not what I asked. Ronan moved closer, maintaining enough distance to keep her comfortable. Before she could respond, Jax appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. He held out an envelope without a word. Ronan examined its contents. A grainy photograph of Father Callan's East Side shelter, marked with an angry red X. Below it, words that made his jaw tighten. Your house doesn't own what isn't yours. Clear the kitchen, Ronan ordered. Staff scattered immediately, leaving only Elodie, who watched with increasing tension. He turned on the sink, pulled out his lighter, and held up her forged ID. Her eyes widened fractionally, the only sign that she recognized it. This ends here, he said, setting the corner aflame and dropping it into the sink. No paper trail for them to follow. Elodie's hands clenched in her apron. You knew. I know enough. He let the water wash away the ashes. Someone's made assumptions about your position here. They're testing boundaries, seeing how I'll respond. I should leave. She took a step toward the door, but Ronan's quiet voice stopped her. That's not an option anymore. He turned to face her fully. They're watching the shelter, your old roots, waiting for you to run so they can grab you. Her breathing hitched, barely noticeable. I've managed before. This is different. Ronan's tone left no room for argument. You're in my house now. That makes you my responsibility. I never asked for your protection. You have it anyway. He laid out a phone on the counter between them. New rules, non-negotiable. You don't leave without my team. Any requests, needs, concerns, they come directly to me. I handle the threats. Elodie stared at the phone, understanding dawning in her eyes. This was the moment, the lock turning, the cage door closing. Even if it was lined with silk and safety, it was still a cage. And if I refuse, then I can't guarantee what happens next. His honesty was brutal but necessary. They're escalating. The shelter photo is a warning. Next time it might not be just a picture. She picked up the phone, its weight symbolic of everything changing. How long? Until I eliminate the threat. He watched her carefully. My security team will rotate shifts outside your suite. Cole and Milo are your primary detail. They've been briefed. Hours passed in a blur of new protocols and adjusted routines. Elodie learned the guard rotations, memorized emergency procedures, accepted the constant shadow of protection while maintaining her duties. The staff whispered, "Of course," wondering what made her special enough for the boss's personal attention. Night fell, and Elodie lay in her new suite, listening to the quiet shuffle of guards changing shifts. Cole Benton's steady footsteps replaced Milo Grant's lighter tread at midnight. The luxury surrounded her: Egyptian cotton sheets, climate control, security cameras watching every approach. But sleep remained elusive. She tracked time by sounds, elevator chimes marking late-night staff, distant city sirens, the occasional murmur of guards' radio checks. Shortly before dawn, different footsteps approached, heavier, measured. Ronan's distinct stride passed her door, paused briefly, then continued down the hall. In the darkness, Elodie touched her scarred shoulder through her nightgown. The protection felt real, Ronan's determination to keep her safe evident in every new measure. But she wondered what price that safety would ultimately demand and whether she'd be strong enough to pay it when the time came. The city slowly brightened outside her window, another day beginning in this gilded fortress. Cole's voice drifted through the door as he updated the morning shift, discussing patrol routes and security protocols. Everything designed to keep her safe, or perhaps to keep her here, depending on perspective. Her new phone sat charging on the nightstand, its screen occasionally lighting up with system updates and security notifications. A direct line to Ronan Vale himself, proof of her changed status and the target it painted on her back. The shelter photo haunted her. Father Callan's sanctuary, marked for violence because someone thought she belonged to Ronan. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years avoiding attention, staying invisible, and now she was at the center of a power play she barely understood. The man who controlled half of New York had burned her false identity and offered real protection instead, turning her hidden life into something both more secure and more dangerous. The city inspector shifted in his seat, eyes darting to the door of Ronan's office like a cornered animal. Ronan didn't move, didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Tell me about the angel," he said quietly. The inspector swallowed hard. It was chaos that night, smoke everywhere, but some workers swear someone pulled them out before the fire crews arrived. Someone. Ronan's tone made it clear this wasn't enough. A woman. The inspector's words tumbled out faster now. Small, quick. She knew the layout somehow. Got people to the loading bay exits before the roof collapsed, then vanished. Ronan's jaw tightened. And this never made the official report because... Above my pay grade, Mr. Vale. The inspector's hands trembled slightly. Higher-ups said to leave it out, said it would complicate the investigation. Of course they did. Ronan had paid good money to keep that investigation narrow and clean. Now he wondered what else that money had buried. Back in the penthouse, he watched through security feeds as Elodie moved through her afternoon routine. The way she favored her left side when reaching high shelves, how she unconsciously angled away from the gas range. Every movement matched the survivor accounts perfectly. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His order had scarred this woman who'd run back into flames to save others. The guilt was unfamiliar, uncomfortable. He wasn't used to questioning past decisions, but this one clawed at him. He made 3 calls in rapid succession, first to his contractor, ordering fire-rated cores for every door in Elodie's corridor, second to building maintenance, disabling the automatic light dimming triggered by smoke detectors on her floor, third to his private chef, canceling dinner service. Instead, he assembled a meal himself in the main kitchen. Simple comfort food: herb roasted chicken, garlic bread, fresh vegetables. He carried the tray to her suite personally, nodding to Cole as the guard opened the door. Elodie looked up from where she sat reading, surprise flickering across her face. "I didn't order dinner. We need to talk." He set the tray on the coffee table. "About Father Callan's shelter." Her expression closed off immediately. "There's nothing to discuss. You volunteer there, under an alias." It wasn't a question. Helping women escape abusive situations. Someone has to. Her voice was quiet but firm. Those women need safe places, people who understand what they're running from. And you understand. Again, not a question. She met his gaze steadily. "Yes. It stops now." He kept his tone gentle but absolute. "Until I neutralize this threat, you can't risk exposure." "Hiding isn't healing," anger sparked in her eyes. "Those women need support, hope, someone to show them there's life after survival." "You can't help anyone if you're dead." The words came out harsher than intended. "I can't help anyone locked in a gilded cage either." She stood, pacing the room. "You think walls and guards make everything better? Safety without purpose is just another prison. The purpose is keeping you alive. Living isn't the same as being alive." She whirled to face him. "You of all people should understand that difference." The statement hit too close to home. How long had he been going through the motions, building his empire while feeling nothing, until she arrived, bringing uncomfortable questions and even more uncomfortable answers? Their argument continued as the sky darkened outside. Elodie's passion for her cause met Ronan's immovable concern for her safety. Neither willing to give ground, both understanding the other's position more than they'd admit. Eventually, exhaustion won out over anger. Elodie's responses grew slower, her movements heavy. She curled into the corner of the couch, still arguing but with less fire. "Just until the threat passes," Ronan said softly, watching her eyes drift closed. "Then we'll discuss alternatives." She mumbled something that might have been agreement or might have been another protest. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. Ronan didn't move her. Instead, he settled into the chair by her door, phone in hand. His text to Jax was brief. Double cameras at Callan's, full spectrum coverage. She'd hate the surveillance, but he'd rather have her angry than endangered. In sleep, Elodie's face softened, years of tension melting away. The dim light caught the edge of her scars, visible where her collar had shifted. Ronan's order had marked her forever, yet here she was, still fighting to help others escape similar fates. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built his empire on control, on making others bend to his will. But Elodie's strength lay in helping others stand tall again. Her determination to continue her shelter work, even under threat, challenged everything he thought he understood about power. Cole's quiet check-in through the door radio reminded Ronan of the hour. He acknowledged with a brief hand signal, never taking his eyes off Elodie's sleeping form. The tray of food sat largely untouched on the coffee table, their argument having taken precedence over appetite. His phone buzzed with Jax's confirmation, new cameras already being installed around the shelter's perimeter. The message included thermal imaging samples proving they could track movement even in the shelter's blind spots. It was a start, but Ronan knew it wouldn't be enough to satisfy Elodie's need to help others. He'd have to find a compromise, some way to keep her safe, while allowing her to maintain the purpose that drove her. The alternative was watching her spirit dim behind his walls, and that thought was surprisingly painful. Morning light filtered through the gym's floor-to-ceiling windows as Elodie faced Jax on the training mats. Her breath came steady, measured, as she waited for his next instruction. "Remember," Jax said, circling her slowly, "it's not about strength, it's about leverage and timing." Elodie nodded, her stance light but ready. She'd traded her usual long sleeves for a fitted athletic top, her scars visible but no longer hidden in shame. "When someone grabs you from behind," Jax demonstrated with a loose hold around her shoulders, "drop your center of gravity. Use their momentum." She followed his guidance, shifting her weight to slip free. The move was smooth, practiced over their morning sessions until it became muscle memory. From the doorway, Ronan watched their training. His presence changed the energy in the room, subtle but unmistakable. Jax stepped back, giving a slight nod to his boss. "Show me what you've learned," Ronan said, stepping onto the mat. His suit jacket and shoes were already set aside, sleeves rolled up to reveal corded forearms. Elodie's eyes tracked his movement, but she didn't retreat. "Are you sure? I won't hurt you." His voice carried absolute certainty. They circled each other, testing boundaries. Ronan's movements were deliberately slow, telegraphing his intentions before each grab. He let her find her rhythm, build confidence in the escape techniques Jax had taught her. When she successfully broke his hold for the third time, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. Good. Again. They continued training, the morning light stretching across the floor as they moved. Ronan gradually increased his speed but never his force, creating a dance of advance and retreat. When Elodie managed to use his own momentum to slip past his guard, he didn't hide his approval. "You're a quick study," he said, helping her up after their final round. "Survival usually is." She accepted his hand, their touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. Their new routine fell into place naturally after that. Silent breakfasts where Ronan read reports while Elodie planned her day. Shared elevator rides where the space between them grew smaller each time. Small victories in autonomy, Elodie writing her own grocery list, choosing her schedule, making requests that Ronan considered carefully before answering. The rain started that evening, hammering against the windows with increasing fury. Elodie sat in her suite's window seat, watching lightning split the sky. Ronan found her there, 2 cups of tea in hand. "The storm's expected to last through the night," he said, offering her one of the cups. She accepted it, breathing in the familiar comfort of chamomile. "Thank you." Ronan settled into the chair across from her, his own cup untouched. "Not all fires are accidents," he said after a long moment. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Elodie's fingers traced the rim of her cup, considering her response. "Not all survivors want revenge," she finally said, meeting his gaze. "Some of us just want to make sure the next fire dies before it starts." Thunder rolled outside, underlining her words. Ronan set his cup aside, moving closer but not touching. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to where her scar disappeared beneath her collar. Elodie's breath caught, but she nodded. Slowly, giving her time to withdraw, Ronan's fingers traced the edge of the scarred tissue. His touch was feather-light, almost reverent. She trembled under his hand but didn't pull away. The storm raged outside while they sat in charged silence, his fingers mapping the proof of her survival. "You're safe here," he murmured, though they both knew safety was relative in their world. "I know." And she did, not just because of his guards or his walls, but because of moments like this, where vulnerability met understanding. When he finally withdrew his hand, the absence felt colder than the rain against the windows. They finished their tea in comfortable silence, watching the storm paint patterns of shadow and light across the city below. Later, as Ronan rose to leave, he paused at the threshold. Instead of closing her door completely, he left it open a few inches, a small gesture of trust, of choice. Through the gap, Elodie could see him settle into the chair in the hallway, his profile illuminated by distant lightning. He would stay there through the storm, a sentinel against more than just physical threats. Cole and Milo maintained their post at either end of the corridor, but it was Ronan's presence that made Elodie feel truly protected. Not because she needed his protection, but because he offered it without demanding submission in return. The rain continued its assault on the windows, but inside the atmosphere had shifted. Something fundamental had changed in their dynamic, not with grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but in these quiet moments of chosen vulnerability. Elodie curled deeper into her window seat, watching the city lights blur through the rain-streaked glass. Beyond her door, Ronan's steady presence kept vigil, neither cage nor captor, but something far more complex. The storm would pass, but this new understanding between them would remain, built on training mats and shared silences, on grocery lists and teacups, on the trust of an open door and the choice to stay. Elodie hummed softly as she changed the linens in the East Wing guest room, her movements precise and practiced. Afternoon sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, warming the space as she worked. The routine tasks helped quiet her mind, gave her hands purpose beyond counting exits and checking shadows. She reached across the king-sized bed to tuck the fitted sheet, not noticing her sleeve had slipped until she heard Ronan's sharp intake of breath from the doorway. Elodie froze, suddenly aware of what he could see, not just the burn scars, but the cruel brand beneath them, a distinctive sigil worked into her flesh. "When?" Ronan's voice was dangerously quiet. Elodie's hands trembled as she pulled her sleeve down, but the damage was done. She'd known this moment would come, eventually. "After South Dock." "Lev Orloff!" He spoke the name like a curse, crossing the room in measured steps. "His mark." She nodded, throat tight. "You know him?" "He supplied accelerants to Vale crews. Years ago." Ronan's jaw clenched. "Before I learned what kind of monster he really was." Elodie perched on the edge of the bed, hands clasped to stop their shaking. I lived under different names after the fire, moved often, stayed quiet. She drew a steadying breath. But they found me during a border crossing. Orlov's men, they said I owed a debt for surviving. Ronan's fingers curled into fists at his sides, but his voice remained controlled. The brand? Their way of marking inventory. The words tasted bitter. I got away before. She trailed off, unable to finish. And you've been running since? It wasn't a question. Until now. Elodie met his gaze. The threats make sense now, don't they? He's cleaning house, erasing loose ends. He won't touch you. Ronan pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Jax, I need everything on Orlov's known aliases. Full sweep, priority 1. He paused, listening. Yes, now. And get me updated route patterns for the next week. Elodie watched him pace, his tactical mind already mapping possibilities. I won't put your people at risk. My people are already at risk if Orlov's involved. Ronan's eyes darkened. He's been waiting for an opening, looking for weakness. Using you is just his latest play. I'm not your weakness. Elodie stood, squaring her shoulders. No, Ronan agreed, studying her with something like admiration. You're my strength, and Orlov's about to learn why. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Security teams rotated patterns, surveillance points shifted, and intel flowed through encrypted channels. Elodie answered questions about Orlov's operation, what she'd seen, heard, remembered through the haze of terror. By midnight, they were in Ronan's office, a massive city map spread across his desk. Red pins marked known locations, blue ones showed possible staging points, string-connected patterns only they could see. The shelter's here, Elodie pointed, her finger tracing the route. He'll watch it, thinking I'll try to warn them. Already covered, Ronan assured her. Father Callan's people are being relocated quietly. No paper trail. Elodie nodded, grateful for his foresight. Her hand hovered over another section of the map, remembering escape routes and hidden paths. Ronan's hand moved to cover hers, stopping just short of touching, offering support without demanding contact. The air between them crackled with shared purpose. This wasn't just about protection anymore. This was war planning. Ronan's empire against Orlov's obsession with ownership, her freedom against his need for control. Tell me about the compound where they held you, Ronan said softly. Elodie closed her eyes, forcing herself to remember details through the fog of trauma. 3 stories, underground garage, guards changed at odd hours to prevent pattern recognition. She continued describing security rotations, camera blind spots, the layout she'd memorized during her captivity. Each piece of information was a weapon now, turned back against her tormentors. Ronan absorbed every detail, occasionally murmuring questions, but never pushing when she hesitated. His presence anchored her to the present, keeping the memories from dragging her under. The brand, he said finally, voice carefully neutral. It was his personal signature? Yes. Elodie's free hand moved unconsciously to her arm. He did it himself, said it was important to mark significant acquisitions personally. Ronan's fingers twitched closer to hers on the map, rage and restraint warring in his expression. We'll need to move quickly. He'll expect me to fortify, not strike. He underestimates you, Elodie observed. He thinks possession equals loyalty. A common mistake among men like him? Ronan's eyes met hers. They never understand that true loyalty can't be branded or bought. The city lights painted patterns across the map between them, across their almost touching hands. In the quiet of his office, surrounded by plans and possibilities, Elodie felt something shift in her chest, fear giving way to fierce determination. They worked through contingencies, mapping backup routes and safe houses. Elodie's knowledge of the city's shadows complemented Ronan's strategic mastery. Together, they built a web that would either catch Orlov or break him. The clock struck midnight, but neither moved to leave. This was too important, too delicate to rush. Every detail they missed could cost lives. Every pattern they found could save them. Ronan's hand remained near hers on the map, a silent promise of support. Not demanding, not claiming, but offering partnership in this dangerous dance they'd begun. They were no longer predator and prey, protector and protected. They were architects of vengeance, builders of justice, partners in a war neither had chosen, but both would see through to the end. Dawn broke over the city as Ronan adjusted his shoulder holster, watching Elodie through the penthouse windows. She stood near the kitchen counter, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup, a habit he'd noticed when she was deep in thought. "We're checking the bakery today," he said, keeping his tone casual. "Need to verify our quiet channels are still secure." Elodie's eyes met his in the reflection. "The safe drop location?" He nodded. The family bakery served as more than just a front. It was where desperate people could leave messages, seek help, or signal trouble without drawing attention. Jax cleared a route. "You're coming with me." He saw her tense slightly. "Safer than leaving you here alone." Caleb North waited with the armored SUV, engine running. The vehicle was a fortress on wheels, bulletproof glass, reinforced panels, run-flat tires. Ronan helped Elodie into the back seat before sliding in beside her. The city moved past in a blur of morning traffic and early commuters. Elodie watched everything, cataloging details with the sharp awareness of someone used to planning escape routes. Ronan found himself studying her profile, the way sunlight caught the faint scars at her collar. The bakery looked peaceful. Morning regulars picking up fresh bread, the scent of coffee and pastries drifting through the open door. Too peaceful. Ronan noticed it first, the slight hesitation in a customer's movement, the bulge of a concealed weapon beneath a jacket. His hand was already moving toward Elodie when the first shot shattered the storefront window. "Down!" He shoved her behind the SUV's engine block, his body covering hers as glass rained around them. Caleb was already on the radio, calling for backup. The gunman moved with practiced coordination, 3 from the front, 2 trying to circle behind. But Ronan was faster, deadlier, a storm of precise violence. His first shot dropped the leader before the man could adjust his aim. The second attacker fell clutching his knee, weapon skittering across pavement. "Back room! Everyone to the back!" Ronan's command carried over the chaos. Civilians scrambled for cover as he engaged the remaining gunmen. His movements were fluid, economical, each shot finding its mark with brutal efficiency. Elodie pressed against the SUV's tire, heart hammering. She could smell gunpowder, hear the sharp reports of Ronan's weapon mixing with screams and breaking glass. A flash of movement caught her eye. A 4th gunman, using the chaos to slip toward the bakery's side door. Without thinking, she grabbed a broken piece of mirror from the shattered window. The reflection gave her the angle she needed. 9 o'clock door! Ronan spun, dropping the flanker before the man could breach the building. Their eyes met briefly. Acknowledgement, trust, something deeper neither could name. It ended as quickly as it began. Sirens wailed in the distance as Ronan's security team secured the scene. Medics helped the bakers, checking for injuries while cleanup crews already moved to contain the situation. Elodie stood shakily, glass crunching under her feet. Her gaze fell on a silver pendant half buried in the debris, a small wolf, exactly like the one she remembered from that burning night. "South Dock," she said softly. Ronan turned, holstering his weapon. "There was a little girl. She was wearing the same pendant." Elodie's voice cracked. "I carried her out through the loading bay. She kept asking for her brother." Ronan went completely still. The morning light caught the shock in his eyes, the devastating recognition. "Mara," he whispered. "My sister." Understanding crashed through Elodie like a wave. The girl she'd saved that night, the one who clung to her neck, coughing from smoke, clutching her silver wolf pendant, was Ronan's sister. She'd carried his heart out of that inferno without knowing. Something broke in Ronan's expression, then reformed into something new. The careful distance he maintained crumbled, replaced by raw emotion he couldn't hide. His hands shook slightly as he reached for the pendant. "She never knew who saved her," he said roughly. "We searched for months, trying to thank." Elodie touched his arm gently. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because she was innocent." Ronan's jaw clenched, years of guilt warring with gratitude. The woman he'd been protecting, the one whose burns he'd caused, had saved his sister's life. The debt between them shifted, deepened, became something neither could fully express. "Sir," Jax appeared at his shoulder. "Area's secured. We should move." Ronan nodded, his composure returning, though his hands still trembled. "Double the patrols around Father Callan's shelter, and get me everything you have on recent movement near South Dock." He guided Elodie back to the SUV, his touch careful but firm. The drive home was silent, heavy with unspoken words and shared understanding. Elodie watched him grip the wolf pendant, knuckles white with emotion. The morning sun painted the city gold, but neither saw it. They were lost in memories of smoke and flame, of a little girl's silver pendant, of debts that could never be repaid and bonds that couldn't be broken. Caleb navigated through traffic, while Ronan's security teams flanked them in unmarked cars. The attack had been professional, coordinated, a message written in bullets and blood. But the message had changed now, become personal in ways the attackers couldn't have predicted. Elodie felt Ronan's gaze on her, saw the way he positioned himself between her and the windows. His protection wasn't just duty anymore. It was penance, gratitude, and something deeper neither dared name. The city moved around them, oblivious to the shifting plates of power and emotion in the armored SUV. Ronan's world had tilted on its axis, rearranged by a simple silver pendant and the weight of an unpayable debt. They returned to the penthouse as morning crowds filled the streets below, unaware of the violence that had briefly shattered their routine. Elodie carried the memory of smoke and a child's trust. Ronan carried the knowledge that redemption sometimes wore the face of the very person you'd wounded. Moonlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting silver lines across Ronan's penthouse. Elodie stood at his door, his suit jacket draped over her arm, her fingers tracing the fine wool. The halls were quiet except for the soft footsteps of the night guards. "Thank you," she said softly, extending the jacket. "Not just for this, for asking first. Before you touched me." Ronan took the jacket, his fingers brushing hers. The contact lingered, neither pulling away. His eyes held questions he wouldn't voice without permission. "Would you like to stay?" he asked, his voice low and careful. Elodie's breath caught. The space between them hummed with possibility and hesitation. She studied his face, the sharp angles softened by shadow, the intensity in his gaze tempered by patience. "Yes," she whispered. He stepped back, letting her cross the threshold on her own terms. The door clicked shut behind her with a gentle finality. Ronan's suite was minimal but luxurious, leather and chrome, dark wood and glass. The city sparkled beyond the windows like scattered stars. They moved toward each other slowly, telegraph every motion. Ronan's hands hovered near her shoulders, waiting. Elodie nodded, and his touch was feather-light as he traced the line of her collar. "May I?" he asked, fingers at her top button. Another nod. The buttons came undone one by one, each revealing more of the map of scars across her skin. Ronan's breath caught, not in horror but in reverence. His fingers followed the paths of healed tissue like reading braille. "Beautiful," he murmured. Elodie's hands shook as she reached for his shirt. He stood perfectly still, letting her set the pace. The fabric parted to reveal his own collection of marks. Bullet wounds, knife scars, the story of survival written in flesh. They undressed each other with the same careful attention, asking permission with touches and looks, answering with sighs and nods. When they were bare, Ronan lifted her hands to his chest, letting her feel his heartbeat. "Everything at your pace," he promised. She explored him first, the solid muscle, the rough patches of scar tissue, the places that made him inhale sharply. He waited, trembling with restraint, until she guided his hands to her waist. Ronan mapped her body like sacred ground. He traced each scar with fingertips and lips, learning the topology of her survival, the burn patterns that spoke of South Dock, the brand that marked Orlov's cruelty, smaller marks that told stories she wasn't ready to share. When his mouth found a sensitive spot beneath her ear, Elodie gasped. Her fingers threaded through his hair, holding him there. He obliged, trailing kisses down her neck while his hands roamed with increasing urgency. They moved to the bed in a dance of give and take. Ronan laid her down like she was precious, covering her body with his butt, keeping his weight on his forearms. Every touch asked permission, every sigh granted it. Elodie arched beneath him as his hands found secret places that made her moan. He watched her face, learning what made her breath catch, what made her grip his shoulders. When she guided him inside her, they both stilled at the intensity. "Okay," he whispered against her lips. "Yes," she breathed, pulling him closer. They moved together in the moonlight, finding a rhythm that built like a tide. Ronan whispered praise against her skin. Beautiful, brave, perfect. Elodie held him like an anchor as pleasure coursed through her veins. After, as their breathing slowed, Ronan traced idle patterns on her hip. The city hummed beyond the windows, a distant lullaby of traffic and life. "There are things I can't wash off," he said quietly. "Choices I've made, blood I've spilled." His fingers stilled on her skin. "But if you stay, I promise you both safety and choice. They're not mutually exclusive, not with me." Elodie propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face. "Safety without choice is just another cage," she said. "I've had enough of cages." "Then you'll have both." His voice carried the weight of an oath. Protection that doesn't confine. Freedom that doesn't leave you vulnerable. She settled against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He reached over and silenced it without looking. Outside, the city's pulse continued. Cars and sirens, the eternal rhythm of urban life. Ronan's arms tightened around her as she drifted toward sleep. He watched the play of light across her skin, the peaceful expression that softened her features. The woman who'd saved his sister, who carried scars he'd caused, who trusted him enough to let him see every mark. The night wrapped around them like a blanket. Security cameras blinked in the corridors, guards made their rounds, but in this room, time seemed suspended. Elodie's breathing deepened into sleep, her body completely relaxed against his for the first time. Ronan stayed awake, one hand moving in soothing circles on her back. Each touch was a promise of protection, of choice, of a future where safety and freedom weren't opposing forces. The city lights painted patterns on the ceiling, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. But here, in this moment, there was only the quiet sound of Elodie's breathing, the warmth of her skin against his, and the weight of promises made in moonlight. Dawn painted the penthouse windows in soft gold. Elodie wrapped her hands around a steaming mug of coffee, noting the unusual quiet in the courtyard below. No early deliveries, no staff chatter. Even the birds seemed hushed. The blast came without warning. Glass exploded inward like deadly rain. The force threw her backwards as coffee splashed across marble. Through ringing ears, she heard screaming from the security station. "Man down! Medical to West Entrance!" Elodie scrambled to her feet, glass crunching under her shoes. The courtyard had become a war zone. Caleb North lay sprawled near the destroyed fountain, blood pooling beneath him. His right leg was... She looked away, bile rising. Jax burst through the stairwell door, face granite hard. Two teams swept the perimeter while medics rushed to Caleb. Ronan appeared at her side, checking her for injuries with careful hands. "I'm okay," she said, but he didn't stop until he was certain. "Report!" he barked at Jax. Bomb team used internal codes, bypassed every failsafe. Jax's voice was tight. "This was inside work, boss, no question." Ronan's jaw clenched. Someone close had betrayed them, someone with high-level access. The implications rippled through the room like poison. The house phone rang. Everyone froze. That line was internal only, reserved for family business. Ronan hit speaker, voice deadly calm. "Vale. Such a mess you've made." The accent was thick Russian, dripping with mock concern. "All for one little bird who flew into wrong nest." "Orloff!" Ronan's knuckles went white on the phone. "Simple terms. Send girl to river docks by sunset." A pause heavy with threat. "Or maybe Father Callan's shelter has accident. So many vulnerable women there. Would be shame." The line went dead. Elodie's heart stopped. The shelter, dozens of women and children who'd trusted her, who had nowhere else to go. She couldn't let them burn for her mistakes. While Ronan and Jax conferred about sweep patterns and security breaches, she slipped to her room. Her hands shook as she wrote the note. "You can't burn for me again." She knew the staff routes by heart now, had mapped them obsessively since arrival, marking blind spots and timing patterns. The service elevator had a maintenance override. 3 cameras on the back corridor were down for repairs. The loading dock guard changed shifts at precise intervals. Elodie moved like a ghost through the building's arteries. Past the laundry room where she'd memorized the schedule, through the kitchen where she'd learned which doors squeaked, down the service hall where she'd counted steps between motion sensors. Her time in hiding had taught her to see buildings as puzzles, to find the gaps, the weaknesses, the forgotten spaces. Now she used that knowledge to protect the people who'd sheltered others like her. She reached the ground floor unseen. Delivery trucks lined up for morning checks, providing cover. She counted breaths between guard rotations, then slipped into the chaos of early traffic. Back in the penthouse, Ronan found her note. The paper crumpled in his fist as rage and fear warred in his chest. She'd chosen to face Orloff alone, rather than risk more innocent lives. "Full lockdown," he ordered, voice like steel on stone. "Every exit, every floor, now!" Jax was already moving, barking commands into his radio. Teams deployed through the building like blood through veins. But Elodie had trained in invisibility, in finding the spaces between security. She knew how to disappear. Ronan strode to the weapons room, selecting with mechanical precision. Shoulder holster, backup piece, ceramic knife, combat watch. Each item a promise of violence to come. "Light up every contact," he told Jax. "Anyone who's touched Orlov money, anyone who's carried his messages. I want locations, routines, weak points." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And prep the river approach. Full assault protocol." "They'll be waiting," Jax warned. "Good." Ronan checked his magazine with practiced hands. So will I. The morning sun climbed higher, painting the broken windows in shades of fire. In the courtyard below, medical teams loaded Caleb into an ambulance. Blood stained the pavement where the fountain had stood for decades. Somewhere in the city, Elodie moved through crowds like smoke, carrying the weight of protection and sacrifice. And in the penthouse, Ronan armed himself for war, each weapon a step closer to the violence coming at sunset. Jax's team spread through the city like a net, hunting whispers of Orlov's operation. Every snitch, every corrupt cop, every warehouse worker who might have seen something, all would be squeezed for information. The river docks were being mapped meter by meter, each approach analyzed, each sniper position marked. The betrayal of internal codes hung in the air like smoke, poisoning trust. Someone close had sold them out. Someone who knew the rhythms of the house, the patterns of security. That reckoning would come later, after Elodie was safe. For now, Ronan focused on the hunt. His people moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for the assault to come. Weapons were cleaned, routes were planned, medical teams were staged. The morning that had started with quiet coffee had become a prelude to war. And as the sun climbed higher, two forces gathered strength. Elodie moving toward sacrifice, and Ronan preparing to paint the river red. Ronan's footsteps echoed through the security hub as monitors cast blue shadows across his face. Door logs scrolled past, each timestamp a piece of the betrayal puzzle. There, Jax pointed to an anomaly. Systems access from accounting 3 weeks ago. Eamon Price's terminal. The conciliere's nephew, the quiet one who kept his head down, did the books, avoided the messy parts of family business. Ronan's jaw tightened, always the ones you least expect. Bring him, now. 10 minutes later, Eamon sat trembling in the windowless interview room. His tie was crooked, glasses fogged with nervous sweat. When Ronan entered, the accountant's face went chalk white. Mr. Vale, I can explain. Save it! Ronan's voice was soft, dangerous. You sold access codes to Orlov. The only question is whether you leave here breathing or in a drawer. Eamon's throat worked. He promised I could walk away clean, start fresh somewhere else. I never meant what? For people to die? Ronan leaned forward. My driver has third-degree burns. A woman I protect is out there alone. Your choices have consequences, Eamon. Tears leaked from behind smudged lenses. Please, I'll do anything. Yes, you will. Ronan pulled out his phone, dialed a number. Call Orlov. Tell him about the vault exchange happening tonight at Riverside Glassworks. Make it convincing. Eamon's hands shook as he took the phone. His voice cracked twice during the call, but the story held. A high-value transfer, minimal security, easy pickings for anyone bold enough to hit it. After, Ronan studied supply manifests while Jax's team secured Eamon in a holding room. A bulk order for specialized burn cream caught his eye. The exact brand Elodie used for her scars, shipped to an abandoned shipping office near the real docks. She's marking her location, Ronan muttered. Letting us track her, Jax nodded. Smart girl, giving us breadcrumbs while appearing to cooperate with Orlov. Ronan spread blueprints across the table. The old shipping office was a maze of corridors and storage rooms, perfect for ambush, but those same corridors could become death traps with the right preparation. Kill the power first, here Furs, he ordered. Then flood the halls with steam from the heating system. Orlov's men are street thugs. They'll panic in the dark, get disoriented. Our teams know the layout, have night vision. We'll own every angle. Teams assembled with practiced efficiency. Tactical gear, communication checks, weapons verified. Ronan selected his own kit with mechanical precision. Lightweight armor, suppressed sidearm, ceramic backup blade. Strike teams of 3, he continued. You want clean lines of fire, no crossfire zones, gas masks for the steam, control the exits first, then sweep inward. Anyone who surrenders lives, anyone who resists doesn't. Maps were memorized, positions assigned, medical support staged 3 blocks out. Jax coordinated with trusted contacts in Harbor Patrol to keep civilian boats clear of the area. In his office, Ronan recorded a brief message for Mara, just in case. The night you survived, someone carried you out. I never knew who. Now I do. If I don't come back, make sure Elodie knows she saved the best of us. The night air bit cold as Ronan stepped outside. 2 armored SUVs idled in the garage, engines purring. His watch showed 11:15 p.m. 45 minutes until midnight, when the power would cut and hell would break loose. Teams loaded up with practiced silence, weapons checked one final time, communications verified. Ronan took his place in the lead vehicle, mind already mapping approach vectors and fallback positions. "Sir," Jax's voice was quiet. "Primary team is ready. Secondary team in position near Glassworks as diversion, tactical support standing by." Ronan nodded once. The city lights blurred past as they moved through empty streets. Each turn brought them closer to the docks, to Elodie, to whatever violence waited in the dark. He thought of her note, "You can't burn for me again," and the quiet strength it took to walk into danger to protect others. She'd saved Mara from the flames he'd ordered set. Now he would save her, whatever the cost. The SUV rolled through shadows, carrying its cargo of controlled violence toward the midnight hour. Ronan checked his watch one last time, each second measured in heartbeats and breath. Time to hunt. The riverfront plunged into darkness at midnight. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes, filling the maze of corridors with thick, disorienting fog. Through his tactical mask, Ronan moved like a ghost, each step precise and lethal. The floor was slick with condensation, air heavy and wet. Shouts echoed from the glassworks. Diversion site. Orlov's men, discovering empty halls and false leads. Here at the real location, silence ruled, broken only by the steady whisper of escaping steam. 2 of Orlov's guards went down without a sound, caught between heartbeats by Ronan's blade. He'd chosen the knife for its silence, wanting no gunshots to alert those deeper inside. Years of training made each movement efficient, economical. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The shipping office door stood ajar, warm light spilling into the misty corridor. Ronan pressed against the wall, listening. Orlov's accented voice drifted out, speaking Russian in lazy, satisfied tones. "Your little guardian angel act ends tonight," Orlov was saying. "No more sheltering my property. No more hiding what belongs to me." Elodie's response was quiet but steady. "Nothing belongs to you." The sound of a slap cracked through the air. Ronan's grip tightened on his knife, but he forced himself to wait, to assess. Rushing in would only put her at greater risk. Through the gap, he could see Elodie tied to a steel chair, her sleeve torn to expose the branded sigil on her shoulder. Orlov circled her like a predator, his usual cold calculation twisted with something darker. 2 more guards flanked the door, automatic weapons ready. "This mark says different," Orlov traced the brand with one finger. "Everything I mark stays mine. Forever." Elodie didn't flinch. "The mark just proves you're afraid. Real loyalty can't be burned into skin." Ronan moved. The first guard died before he could turn, knife finding the gap between vest and collar. The second managed half a shout before a thrown blade took him in the throat. Orlov spun, reaching for his pistol. Ronan's first shot shattered his kneecap, dropping him to the floor. The second bullet punched through his gun hand, sending the weapon skittering away. "Vale!" Orlov's voice was tight with pain, but still held that mocking edge. "Coming to protect your new toy?" Ronan crossed to Elodie, cut her bonds with precise movements. His eyes never left Orlov, who clutched his ruined knee and laughed wetly. "She's marked!" Orlov spat. "My mark, my property, you can't—" "Quiet." Ronan's tone could have frozen flame. He helped Elodie stand, steadying her when she swayed. "This is your choice," he told her softly. "Walk away now, or say the word, and I end him. Whatever you need." Elodie rubbed her wrists where the ropes had bit deep. She looked at Orlov, trembling but unbowed. "End it." Ronan's shot was clean, centered, final. Orlov's mocking smile died with him. In the ringing silence, Ronan holstered his weapon. Steam still coiled through the doorway, but here the air felt suddenly, achingly clear. Time for the last truth, the one that might break whatever fragile thing had grown between them. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "About South Dock, about the fire." Elodie went very still. "You ordered it." "Yes." The word felt like glass in his throat. "I gave the order." "Didn't know there were people inside, didn't check, and you—" His voice cracked. "You saved my sister, carried Mara out wearing our family coin. I didn't know until now." Tears spilled down Elodie's cheeks, but her gaze held steady. "How many died that night?" 27. He'd memorized every name, every face from the reports. "I can't undo it. Can't wash that blood away. If you hate me—" "Stop!" Her hand found his, fingers interlacing. "Hatred doesn't heal anything, but you can spend the rest of your life making it right, protecting instead of destroying, being the man who saves rather than burns." I swear it, Ronan whispered. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I'll spend every day trying to balance that scale. Elodie's other hand came up to touch his face, thumb brushing his cheek. Then start now. Help me keep others safe. Turn your power toward shelter instead of fire. Sirens wailed in the distance, harbor patrol responding to the gunfire. Ronan shrugged out of his coat, wrapped it around Elodie's shoulders. She leaned into him, exhausted but unbroken. Together they stepped into the cold night air. Steam billowed around their ankles, dissipating in the wind off the river. Behind them, Jax's team moved efficiently, erasing evidence, handling cleanup. Ahead, red and blue lights painted the fog in shifting colors. Ronan held Elodie close as they walked, each step taking them further from the past shadows and into whatever future they would build together. The night was cold, but spring wasn't far away. Time for new growth, for healing, for change. The coat around Elodie's shoulders still held his warmth. She pulled it tighter, fingers finding his again in the darkness. They moved in perfect step, matched rhythms toward the waiting cars and the city beyond. Weeks passed like tides, each day washing away more traces of violence. The courtyard's shattered glass had been swept clean, replaced by fresh limestone and granite. Workers moved with practiced efficiency, transforming destruction into renewal. In the medical wing, Caleb North gritted his teeth through another round of physical therapy. The blast had taken most of his left leg, but not his spirit. 3 more reps, his therapist encouraged, and Caleb pushed through, sweat beading on his forehead. Ronan had ensured he had the best care money could buy. Down in the financial district, trust accounts grew steadily for the bakery families affected by the shooting. Maravale personally oversaw each distribution, making sure children's education funds were secured and medical bills vanished. She moved through board meetings with quiet authority, redirecting Vale resources toward healing rather than harm. The shelter network needs expanding, Father Callan said during one afternoon meeting, spreading blueprints across Ronan's desk. More safe houses, better security. His collar was slightly crooked, but his eyes were sharp as ever. Your sister's already approved the funding. Ronan nodded, studying the plans. Whatever they need. No questions asked, no names required. Twice a week, he sat with Elodie through laser sessions to fade Orlov's brand. The medical suite was always warm, lights dim, except for the precise beam working to erase that cruel mark. Ronan held her hand through each treatment, thumb stroking her palm in time with her breathing. Almost there, the doctor murmured during the final session. See how it's fading? Elodie watched in the mirror as the last traces of Orlov's ownership disappeared, leaving only the faintest shadow. That night, Ronan visited a discreet tattoo artist who specialized in scar coverage. He chose to mark himself with the pattern of burn scars Elodie had hidden for so long, a permanent reminder inked into his ring finger. Why there? She'd asked, touching the fresh tattoo. Because some bonds should be visible, he'd answered. Some promises need to be worn openly. In the city courthouse, Eamon Price faced justice without interference. Ronan watched from the back as families of South Dock victims testified, their grief finally finding voice. When asked if he would intervene, Ronan simply shook his head. Let the law work, he said. Let them have their peace. The new courtyard took shape under spring sunshine. Fresh-cut stone released its mineral scent into the air, mixing with river salt and the last chill of winter. Craftsmen fitted each block with precision, building something stronger than what had fallen. As twilight painted the sky in watercolor shades of purple and gold, a small group gathered in the finished space. Father Callan stood quietly beside Mara, whose silver wolf pendant caught the fading light. Jax maintained a respectful distance, coordinating security through his earpiece, with subtle hand signals. Elodie stepped forward, something bright cupped in her palm. The silver wolf coin caught fire in the sunset as she held it out to Ronan. Years ago, the same coin had hung around Mara's neck as Elodie carried her from flames. Now it represented a different kind of salvation. Be a better king, she said simply, pressing the coin into his hand. Ronan's fingers closed around the metal, still warm from her touch. He studied her face, so much stronger than the frightened woman who'd first hidden in his kitchens, yet still carrying that same core of quiet grace. You're mine forever, he promised, drawing her close. The kiss was gentle but certain, sealing words with action. Around them, the new stone walls rose strong and sure, protective rather than imprisoning. Jax's voice carried softly as he coordinated the night rotation. East sector clear, north team in position. The familiar routine of security wrapped around them like a shield. River wind swept through the courtyard, lifting Elodie's hair and carrying the clean scent of fresh-cut stone. The Vale Empire stood transformed, no longer built on fear and force, but on protection and purpose. Each piece had been remade, from the ground up, around the woman who'd taught their king to rule with conscience instead of just control. Mara smiled, touching her throat where the wolf coin had once hung. Father Callan nodded in quiet approval. The sunset painted everything in shades of possibility as darkness gathered at the edges of the sky. In the distance, church bells marked the hour. Security lights came on automatically, casting soft pools of illumination across the new courtyard. The construction dust had finally settled, leaving everything clean and pristine in the growing dark. Ronan kept one arm around Elodie as they walked the perimeter together, checking each detail of the rebuild. Where there had been broken glass, now stood reinforced windows. Where bombs had scarred the walls, fresh stone rose in elegant lines. Even the gardens had been replanted, young shoots reaching toward spring sunshine. The night shift guards took their positions with practiced ease, their movements coordinated through Jax's quiet commands. This protection was built on loyalty now, not fear. The difference showed in every face, every gesture. In Ronan's pocket, the silver coin pressed against his heart, a reminder of what had been lost, what had been saved, and what could still be built from the ashes of the past. Beside him, Elodie's steps matched his own, their rhythms perfectly aligned as the river wind rose around them,